In Just by E. E. Cummings. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston Tharp. In just spring, when the world is mud-luscious, the little lame balloon man whistles far and wee, and Eddie and Bill come running from marvels and piracies, and it's spring, when the world is puddle-wonderful. The queer old balloon man whistles far and wee, and Betty and Isabel come dancing from hopscotch and jump rope. And it's spring, and the goat-footed balloon man whistles far and wee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Hello and welcome to the Whistling Podcast. My name is Matt McTelvist. I want to give a thank you to listener ADG from NYC for sending me that E. E. Cummings poem. The poem is called In Just. So it's my intention to release a podcast every 2 weeks. This week is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to do a very short podcast today, but it's going to lead into next week's podcast, which is much longer. These two podcasts have one thing in common, and they are about whistling women. Today's episode is a very short article, more of an editorial, written by Charles Dudley Warner in 1892 for Harper's Magazine. So, you may ask, who was Charles Dudley Warner? Charles Dudley Warner was born on September 12, 1829, died October 20th, 1900. He was an American essayist, novelist, and a friend of Mark Twain, with which he co-authored the novel The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today. In 1884, he joined the editorial staff of Harper's Magazine, for which he conducted the editor's drawer until 1892. After that, he took charge of the editor's study. His most famous quote is, "Everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it." And now on to the article. Harper's new monthly magazine. January 1892. Editor's Drawer. The wisdom of our ancestors, packed away in proverbial sayings, may always be a little suspected. We have a vague respect for a popular proverb as embodying folk experience and expressing not the wit of one, but the common thought of a race. We accept the saying unquestioning as a sort of inspiration out of the air, true because nobody has challenged it for ages, and probably for the same reason that we try to see the new moon over our left shoulder. Very likely, the musty saying was the product of the average ignorance of an unenlightened time, and ought not to have the respect of a scientific and traveled people. In fact, it will be found that a large proportion of the proverbial sayings which we glibly use are fallacies based on a very limited experience of the world, and probably were set afloat by the idiocy or prejudice of one person. To examine one of them is enough for our present purpose.
Whistling girls and crowing hens always come to some bad ends.
It would be interesting to know the origin of this proverb, because it is still much relied on as evincing a deep knowledge of human nature, and as an argument against change, that is to say, in this case, against progress. It would seem to have been made by a man, conservative, perhaps malevolent, who had no appreciation of a hen and a conservatively poor opinion of woman. His idea was to keep woman in her place, a good idea when not carried too far, but he did not know what her place is, and he wanted to put a sort of restraint upon her emancipation by coupling her with an emancipated hen. He therefore launched this shaft of ridicule and got it to pass as an arrow of wisdom shot out of a popular experience in remote ages. In the first place, it is not true, and probably never was true even when hens were at their lowest. We doubt its Sanskrit antiquity. It is perhaps of Puritan origin and rhymed in New England. It is false as to the hen. A crowing hen was always an object of interest and distinction. She was pointed out to visitors, the owner was proud of her accomplishment, and he was naturally likely to preserve her life, especially if she could lay. A hen that can lay and crow is a
rare bird.
And it should be parenthetically said here that the hen who can crow and cannot lay is not a good example for woman. The crowing hen was of more value than the silent hen, provided she crowed with discretion. And she was likely to be a favorite, and not at all to come to some bad end, except indeed where the proverb tended to work its own fulfillment. This is the regrettable side of most proverbs of an ill nature, that they do help to work the evil they predict. Some foolish boy who had heard this proverb and was sent out to the hen coop in the evening to slay for the Thanksgiving feast thought he was a justifiable little providence in wringing the neck of the crowing hen. Because it was proper, according to the saying, that she should come to some bad end. And as years went on and that kind of boy increased and got to be a man, it became a fixed idea to kill the amusing, interesting, spirited, emancipated hen, and naturally the barnyard became tamer and tamer. The production of crowing hens was discouraged. The wise old hens laid no eggs with a crow in them, according to the well-known principle of heredity, and the man who had in his youth exterminated the hen of progress actually went about quoting that false couplet as an argument against the higher education of woman.
Oh, good heaven!
As a matter of fact also, the couplet is not true about woman. Whether it ought to be true is an ethical question that will not be considered here. The whistling girl does not commonly come to a bad end. Quite as often as any other girl, she learns to whistle a cradle song, low and sweet and charming, to the young voter in the cradle. She is a girl of spirit, of independence of character, of dash and flavor. And as to lips, why, you must have some sort of presentable lips to whistle. Thin ones will not. The whistling girl does not come to a bad end at all, if marriage is still considered a good occupation, except a cloud may be thrown upon her exuberant young life by this rascally proverb. Even if she walks the lonely road of life, she has this advantage, that she can whistle to keep her courage up. But in a larger sense, one that this practical age can understand, it is not true that the whistling girl comes to a bad end. Whistling pays. It has brought her money. It has blown her name about the listening world. Scarcely has a non-whistling woman been more famous. She has set aside the adage, She has done so much toward the emancipation of her sex from the prejudice created by an ill-natured proverb which never had root in fact. But has the whistling woman come to stay? Is it well for women to whistle? Are the majority of women likely to be whistlers? These are serious questions, not to be taken up in a light manner at the end of a grave paper. Will woman ever learn to throw a stone? There it is. The future is inscrutable. We only know that whereas they did not whistle with approval, now they do. The prejudice of generations gradually melts away, and woman's destiny is not linked with that of the hen, nor to be controlled by a proverb, perhaps not by anything. Charles Dudley Warner. Well, looks like we have a bit of a progressive here on our hands. Just imagine this was about 28 years before women had the right to vote, and imagine a time when women couldn't even whistle, but there was one particular woman who fought against this taboo. So Mr. Charles Dudley Warner gives us a little hint at the end about one particular woman who started to make money, and quite a lot of money, whistling publicly. Next week we're going to find out who this remarkable woman was, so we have a sort of cliffhanger here. So that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening.